Leader, we're now live on YouTube. I'll do a roll call first of all, if that's okay.
Yes, please.
Councillor Connett.
Present.
Councillor Dewhurst.
Present.
Councillor Jackie Hook.
Present.
Councillor Keeling.
Present.
Councillor Jeffries.
Present.
Councillor McGregor.
Present.
Councillor Purser.
Present.
Councillor Purser, sorry.
He has said he's present. Sorry.
Yes,
present.
Councillor.
Oh, sorry, can you
Taylor.
not hear me?
Yes, we can, Stephen.
Councillor Wrigley.
Yes, I'm present.
Roll call completed, Leader. Lovely, thank you very much, and welcome to
Councillor
the.
Taylor is present as well.
Yes, we noted that. Thank you, Gareth. Yes, welcome to the executive for the 11th of February on a cold day, and hope you stay warm and well. So let's crack on with the agenda. There are no apologies for absence, and I understand Councillor David Cox will be joining us for item 12, which is the notice of motion referred from the previous council meeting. So item 2 then is the minutes, and may I take a proposer and seconder to approve the minutes assigned from the last meeting. So Councillor Taylor proposing and Councillor Keeling seconding. Can I take a show of hands, all those in favour? Yeah, I think that's clearly carried. Thank you, it's unanimous. All right. Item 3, may I ask if anyone has any declarations of interest, either new or current on their existing register of interests, or any items on the agenda? Okay, no, well, thank you very much for that. But if during the course of discussion on the item, something does come to mind, do declare it at the time. Thank you. Item 4, there are no public questions, I understand.
No public questions, Leader.
All right, so let's move to item 5, the executive forward plan, and that's to note the forthcoming decisions, and this will be updated shortly. We content to note that? Yeah, okay, thank you very much. So recommendations to full council, item 6, the final financial plan proposals, and we'll move to Councillor Keeling shortly, and then Martin Flitcroft, the Chief Financial Officer on this. May I, as Leader of the Council, offer my thanks to the Overview and Scrutiny Committees for their consideration of the budget this year at their meetings, and for their recommendations made to Executive today, and for our consideration before making a recommendation to Council. I really do appreciate all of the work done by our councillors on that, and for the comments and feedback we've had from a number of town and parish councils as well across the district. So with that, I'll move to Councillor Keeling. Thank you.
Thank you, Leader. Leader, I propose that these proposals be considered together with any subsequent consultation comments for approval by the council as the final budget for 2021-22 and the outline plan for the subsequent years 22-23 and 23-24. The proposed budget includes an increase in council tax of £5 to 2.85% to £180.17. Continued funding for a climate change officer and enhanced planning enforcement. Increased provision in the capital programme for climate change projects. The continuing reduction in new homes bonus. Other central funding reductions, in particular, provisional assumptions for business rates for future years and the reset of the baseline. Reserves at 13% of the net revenue budget of just under £2 million. Increased support for housing, including Teambridge 100, whilst backing business and bringing people and organisations together for local neighbourhood planning. Infrastructure delivery plan, investment funded by communities, infrastructure levy and external sources where available. Continuation of grant funding for the South West Regional Monitoring Programme, towns and centre investment in infrastructure and employment, use of long-term borrowing where appropriate, and assumption of a 1.5% pay deal. And we continue the rural aid funding freeze during the COVID-19 pandemic. The Executive Committee recommended to Council to note the mid-year review of Treasury Management shown in Appendix 8. That being the formal part of the final budget report, dear colleagues, this is a budget to promote social and economic recovery while balancing the books. Can I first pay tribute to our staff who have contributed to the savings made, especially our Chief Financial Officer, Martin Flincroft, and his team. On the 4th of February, we received the final settlement from government, and there are no material changes between the provisional settlement I shared with you on the 5th of January and the final settlement for Teignbridge District Council. Colleagues, I would like to bring to your attention the New Homes Bonus report of a new round of allocations were announced in the settlement, year 11. These allocations are a one-off and will not attract future legacy payments. In fact, the written statement underlines that this will be the final set of allocations under the current approach. Ministers are keen to replace the New Homes Bonus and plan to consult shortly on the future. There are also no guarantees given about local government funding reform, although we are expecting the reforms to be implemented in 22-23. But the government's written statement only commits to revisiting the priorities for financial reform in the time for the next spending review. Ministers will also be taking into account wider work on the future of the business rates. The final budget proposals are to date from the latest lockdown, so no significant changes apart from a budget gap widening next year to 1.2 million. So moving forward, we expect next year will be balanced by earmark reserves, a budget gap of 1.2 million in 22-23 and 2.6 million in 23-24. So over the 3 years, we have a budget gap of 3.8 million. Our capital programme is unchanged, just slightly rescheduling dates. We will also consider whether we can reinstate the 0.5 million revenue contribution from the reserve to capital, and we'll keep this as an option. Colleagues, we now have the data back from our survey on the budget, and we have resounding support for the key areas of jobs, housing and environment. 2/3 of those responding agreed to increase council tax, backing business and improving town centres. 71% agreed that we should invest in infrastructure. 81% agreed to our proposals. Sorry, I'll correct that. Sorry, 61% agreed to our proposals to support housing, and approximately 2/3 agreed to our carbon management plan. In terms of looking at our future budgets, we also had the following responses. 70% of those responding agreed to identify generating more income to reinvest in our council services. And 45% of the respondents want to look at making more savings. Leader, colleagues, this administration, through challenging times, has produced a budget for the residents of Teignbridge, bringing forward our 3 main priorities. Jobs, 2 million for empty employment sites. Investment in Newton Abbot High Street, creating local jobs. Housing, Teignbridge First 100 council homes, being built now and creating jobs for the local. Environment, our commitment to the climate emergency, employing a climate change officer, and our Greenleaf capital investments. Working together across all political groups, this budget will promote social and economic recovery while balancing the books. I'd like to pass you over to Martin now, who will take you through the detail, and we will both be happy to answer any questions at the end. Martin, please.
Thank you very much. So, as indicated, this is the final budget proposals for the year 21-22 and the outline figures for 23-20 up to 23-24. The figures in the report were based on the provisional settlement, and as you've heard, the final settlement hasn't changed any of those numbers. There's nothing else to report in that respect. And the final settlement also confirmed the referendum limits being the same at the higher of 2% or above £5. The figures from the initial budget proposals have been updated to reflect the latest lockdown, and there are no material changes to the capital programme. The final budget proposals also include that mid-year review of Treasury and Management to be noted by Council, and some extra detail in the appendices around cost per service area. So the key recommendations are that £5 increase in council tax to £180.17, increasing climate change funding, continuing funding for enhanced planning enforcement, maintaining revenue reserves at just under £2 million, increasing support for housing with the Teambridge 100, infrastructure delivery plan investment, continuation of the grant-funded South West Regional Coastal Monitoring Programme, and town centre investment in infrastructure and employment. Section 2 of the executive report sets the scene around reductions in government funding, savings, COVID-19 impacts, and the inclusion of the Teambridge 100 in the capital programme, together with provisions for climate change projects and the future High Street Funds bid. Section 3 of the report provides more details on the savings made to assist with the budget gaps arising, and I would refer you to 3.3 in particular, and future costs impacting on the council in 3.9, and the mid-year review of Treasury Management in 3.11. Section 4 covers the revenue budget at Appendix 4 and fees and charges at Appendix 5. There are general inflationary increases in most charges, and some charges at Newton Abbot Market have been frozen after having been reduced last year. And 4.2 to 4.4 gives more details around those fees and charges. Section 4 also looks at our proposed change in council tax and provides a multi-year summary of how our funding has changed from government, including revenue support grant, business rates and new homes bonus. And the table there shows us a 35% reduction over that time period. The key paragraph is 4.27 and how we have funded the budget gaps. We still have a budget gap of 1.2 million in 22-23 and 2.6 million in 23-24. On top of that, the aspiration is to put another £500,000 back into our capital programme through the revenue funding and would increase the savings further. And failure to deliver savings or obtain greater funding from government could trigger the issue of a Section 114 notice in the future. Section 5 includes details of the capital programme. As mentioned, no material changes from the initial budget proposals, and that's at Appendix 7, and includes the housing via the Teambridge 100, climate change, infrastructure and employment. And Section 6 covers the consultation on the budget proposals and the outcomes of a budget survey, which Councillor Keeling has outlined earlier in our presentation. And they will form part of the full council budget report appendix when the full council papers come out later. So that's a quick review of the final budget report, and happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Martin, and thank you, Richard. I'm going to come to Councillor Purser in a moment. Martin, just during your presentation, you used a phrase, a Section 114 notice, which I'm sure we all know what is, but as we're in a public meeting, could you just briefly describe what a Section 114 notice is? What does that mean if it had to be, if you had to exercise that function? What does it mean for the council?
Yeah, so as a Chief Finance Officer, one of the statutory duties is to ensure that we have a balanced budget every year, and we've managed to obtain that for 21-22 by our use of earmark reserves. But that's a one-off use, and going into the future years and looking at our medium-term financial plan for those future years, it's clear at the moment that there are budget gaps. So we have to try and work through how we can meet those gaps via making savings, increasing income, or getting more government support, and we're working all of those strands. If it becomes clear at some point in the future that we just cannot meet that balanced budget, that's where the Chief Finance Officer would need to raise the Section 114 notice, which would give notice to members that it's pretty clear in his or her view that we just cannot balance the budget going forward, and we would have to take key measures to stop expenditure, maybe stop services for a period of time to allow us to get into that balanced position.
So if I can summarise, Martin, thank you for that. In essence, we're balancing the budget this year and next year, but we very clearly identified from you and Councillor Keeling that we've got to save 3.8 million over the next 3 years. And the issue of a Section 114 notice is that if we fail to do that, your job as the Chief Financial Officer is to issue that notice or to warn that it might be issued, and effectively the council has to strip down to just the essential expenditure to maintain life and death services.
That's correct, yes.
Lovely, thank you for that. I'm going to move on, Martin, but I really appreciate the clarity, because I think it's important that we note what that means. Councillor Purser.
Thank you, Leader, and thank you, Martin and Richard, for those presentations. It's just a very minor, sort of slightly picky point, but on the first proposed budget recommendation, it ends with to £180.17. Should that not then be caveated for a Band E property? Because obviously, if you're in a Band A property that's currently paying, I don't know, £125, there's an implication that could go to 180, which clearly it's not. So sort of for absolute clarity, should that be caveated with a Band D after it?
Yeah, I can understand. It's a phrase that's sort of widely used because it's always reflecting of a Band D. Yes, you could add the words to a Band D. When you come to the full council proposals, you'll see the full range of bands in there, where the £180.17 is reflected in Band D, and you can see the different bandings for each particular band from A to H.
Thank you.
Councillor McGregor.
Thank you, Chair. Martin, it was just a quick one. Is it fair to say that we knew that there was going to be a gap in the finances of the council prior to May 2019, and that this has been exacerbated in some respects by the COVID crisis that we're all currently suffering? And in terms of income, would it also perhaps be fair to say that it might cause some unnecessary pain in future, where we may have to go beyond the minimum, the maximum referendum amount in future in terms of generating income to try and cover the gap, so that we can maintain services as they are at the moment?
So in terms of looking back, when we were looking forward for budget gaps, I think we've been aware for a number of years now that there was going to be a budget gap, because we knew that the business rates system was going to be reset. We thought it would be reset this year, and we were aware that we were likely to lose most of the growth that we've obtained through business rates over the past 5 to 6 years. And in that respect, that's why we've been putting money into earmark reserves to reflect that cliff edge. Obviously, that we didn't anticipate the pandemic, and that's caused even greater problems. But what the pandemic did do was push back the business rates reset by a year, while government tried to gather their thoughts as to how they were going to fund us in the future. So the earmark reserves we'd set aside for that reset has now aided the pandemic difference, where the government hasn't met all of our income stream losses. So we've been able to bridge the gap that way. But that obviously only meets part of the problem, and we can see the problem arising in 2 years' time, where we need to address it. So I'm hopeful that we can take actions ourselves to address the balance, combined with working with government, which we have been doing over the last 12 months. with more consultation this year around how we address those funding differences and making the correct representations. And there's something come out recently just on new homes bonus, where there's a consultation for us to look at, which the deadline I think is in April. So I'll be looking at that shortly to see, and that allows us to put our thoughts forward around what we think should happen with new homes bonus. And that's just one of the streams that we need to look at. But there's still no clarity about from government as to when they will do that. That could happen next year, or they may, with the pandemic still, you know, we're right in the middle of it, they may delay it another year. We just don't know. I don't think government have got the answers at the moment, but we have to assume it's going to happen next year. So again, council tax, I guess, would be looked at. We have suggested that councils should have more independence around setting their own levels, rather than being a blanket figure for everyone. Obviously, police have had a different figure to a district council, 3 times what we've been allowed to set. So there's some disparity there. So I think working with government will allow us to see whether we can change that going forward, and that might be to the better of Teignbridge.
Lovely. Thank you for that, Martin. I think it's been a hugely challenging budget, and like I say, I do repeat my thanks to Overview Scrutiny for their work and the work of town and parish councils, many of which have stepped in to take on services or to do more in their own area. My view is that we're caught between a rock and a hard place, because so much of local government finance is constrained by government regulation. So although we have a choice about whether we increase the council tax in Teignbridge by the maximum £5 permitted, in effect, the government has assumed that we will have included that in our spending power. So to do less, it will actually cause the government to say, well, you obviously don't need the money, and that may have an impact on our ability to claim for loss of business. That then feeds on, because over a good number of years, government generally has encouraged councils to rely less on government grants, so we don't get a rate support grant now, and I think we've heard previously in meetings that we've, that's gone down for something like 4 million a year to nothing now. And the impact of that is we're being encouraged to raise money through fees and charges, through rental incomes, to invest, which we've done. And of course, the pandemic has not just affected us through loss of car parking, leisure, and other income sources. It's affected many other councils as well. And that's part of a dilemma we face. And I think all of us as councillors also recognise that while we are talking as a £5 as a Band D average, as Martin Flitcroft has said, the police will be charging £15, so that's 20, plus whatever the town and parish councils charge, plus whatever the fire service charge, plus Devon County Council, which is the largest preceptor. So one might talk of, say, 2% for them, plus the 3% adult social care, that would be 5% for Devon County Council. Households may well be expecting an average council tax rise this year, perhaps around £100. The difficulty is for a lot of people, of course, as we all know, they are hurting because of their jobs, because of the economy, because they've been furloughed. So it's no sense of joy that council tax has to increase. It's an awful tax. What I would say for those people who live in Teignbridge, of course, is that this is the one council in Devon which continues to offer the 100% council tax reduction for those in greatest need. And that's a very real benefit. And we are seeing that need coming in as more people come into universal credit, as more people are claiming free school meals, as more people are looking for help from the Exceptional Hardship Fund. So I don't think, colleagues, we as a council have any choice but to increase the council tax for us by £5 a year, which is just less than 10 pence a week. But we do it mindful of all of the other impacts that people will be facing in our area. And that's why I think our budget is so right to focus on the Teignbridge 100, the modern council house programme that we've got, about creating jobs and investing in the economy as and where we can. We're a part player in that. There's a big role for others as well, including the Local Enterprise Partnership. And of course, the work we're doing in terms of climate change. And that isn't just about climate, but that too is an investment in jobs, in helping people, in cutting our carbon output. So it has many benefits. So I think it's a very active budget. I know Councillor Keeling has proposed it. I'm very happy to second it. I can't see any other questions. So may I ask colleagues if we can take a vote, and if it's unanimous. So all those in favour, please. And Sarah, as it's a budget vote, do we need to do a roll call on it as it's a budget
No, we
vote?
don't.
We don't, just like council.
Not at executive, no.
Okay, fine. Thank you very much. So that's unanimous, and thank you very much for that, colleagues. So let's move on to the next item then, which is item 7, the Teignmouth Public Spaces Protection Order, pages 63 to 88, and that's Councillor Wrigley.
Thank you, Leader. Yes, so we're bringing forward today for Executive to approve to go to full council a proposal for a public space protection order around the centre of Teignmouth, principally focused around the Den, the seafront, the back beach, the Triangle, Wellington Street and Lower Brook Street. This is about trying to clamp down on antisocial behaviour and poor behaviour whilst people are misusing, abusing alcohol and other substances. I'm always very loath to look at public space protection orders because they can be quite a draconian instrument, but this one has come forward at the request of the local Teignmouth police and has been unanimously indeed, approved by Teignmouth Town Council. There have been problems in the centre of Teignmouth, and this is an extra tool that will help the local police try to clamp down on those problems and help to solve them. We continue in our efforts to have less draconian interventions to help the people in that situation before it gets to this point. But in terms of having an extra tool, this is considered necessary. And so I ask you to approve to send this forward to full council, please.
Thank you. Any comments from members of the executive? Councillor McGregor.
Thank you, Chair. In terms of the public space protection order, I think when you look at the outcry that was occurring over the summer last year, with quite a considerable amount of antisocial behaviour, particularly around the back beach and nearby streets and the promenade, I think perhaps it will be slightly more acceptable to the residents of Teignmouth on that basis. One thing I was going to ask is if we could put an amendment into recommendation 2B, where it says, in consultation with the solicitor of the council, make such minor amendments to the draft order as she considered appropriate before the order is sealed, that members of the executive are notified of those changes as well.
Thank you, Councillor McGregor. Yes, we usually do have in these delegated powers there that it's done in consultation with the executive member concerned. And if you would like to put to that, then I would be happy to take that amendment.
Well, I think if colleagues are happy, we'll just include. I think that's sensible consultation. Okay, everyone content with that? Okay. Anything else anyone needs to say? Councillor Cox, I just have to say to you, you haven't previously asked to speak on this item, so I'm not allowing you to do it now. You have to ask to speak in advance of the meeting, but you are entitled to speak on the motion at item 12. Thank you. Any other comments? Right. So can we take a show of hands in favour of item 7?
Leader, could we just have a proposer and a seconder, because I haven't had that. I just want to clarify, it's in consultation with the solicitor to the council. Did you want to, and is it the executive member or that all executive are notified?
No, the executive member for communities currently in,
Yeah, so that's, sorry, I just clarify, that's being added to the recommendation.
Yes,
that's right.
Yeah.
So it's the solicitor and the executive member for homes and communities. I just wanted to be sure. Martin's nodding at me saying yes, that's fine. So if I could have a proposer and a seconder for that.
Well, Councillor Wrigley will propose, no doubt, and Councillor McGregor is seconding.
Okay, thank you.
And all those in favour? It's lovely.
That's
Thank you very
unanimous.
much for that.
Thank you.
Okay. So let's move to item 8, which is the notice of motion equality of representation. And Councillor Jeffries.
Hello, can you hear me? I'm still having trouble with my internet. So
We can hear you very well.
okay, thank you. So, colleagues, this paper is a culmination of a large amount of input from members and across departments regarding the continuing support and recognition of diverse communities, requirements and contributions to Teambridge and the UK. The work that has been done to bring these recommendations to you today has informed the development of similar within Devon County and will continue to contribute to the wider governmental review. It reflects everyone's continuing commitment to change within this area. I want to thank those of you who have made the effort to contact me to seek greater understanding of what you can do or are doing personally and to put forward your views. In particular, members of Audit Scrutiny, the working groups and officers. I hope that this paper accurately reflects those discussions. 2020 particularly saw a peeling back of understanding of what those of us in diverse communities face in the UK and internationally, and with a desire for change and even greater resolve to come together within all communities to achieve that change. So this paper's recommendations to go to full council are that have come out of the Audit Scrutiny Committee, and their motions 1 through 7 from the BAME Notice of Motion. And this includes briefly equalities training for members, and this isn't exhaustive because it's all in the text, a review of the equalities policy detailed in section 2.2 for the leader to write to the Secretary of State in respect of educational representation for BAME communities, both currently and historically, and also calling for a national debate led by the BAME community. We have seen a revision of the Councillors' Community Fund form, which is detailed in section 2.3, and that refers specifically to the investigation into street naming, which I feel has been rigorously discussed, and this section provides the detail of this. Motion number 3 highlights the education project, which has secured funding. It's been put back slightly this year due to the restrictions that have been in place, but we are going into the school to provide the project in September 2021, starting with Teignmouth Community School. So colleagues, I'm excited to be able to present this paper to you today and hope that you'll accept the recommendations to take to full council laid out in full to ensure Teambridge continues to demonstrate best practice in the field of addressing support for rural diversity and the BAME experience. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Jeffries. I appreciate that. Any comments from colleagues? In that case, I'd like to thank everyone, because I know it's gone through a number of committees in the council, over scrutiny, audit scrutiny, and from the original motion, I think it's taken its time quite rightly to be thought through, and I'm very happy to see this going to council. So Nina, I guess you are proposing. I'm very happy to second. Can we take a show of hands in favour?
Unanimous, Leader.
Unanimous, lovely. Thank you very much for that, and thank you to everyone for all of their work on that. And I know officers have been involved too. I think it's a very good piece of work. Thank you. So can I move then to item 9, which is the proposed long lettings and freehold transfer of the WCs, and I think that must be Councillor Dewhurst.
No, I think that is Councillor Keeling.
I was just testing.
Sorry.
To make sure you were
You just gave me a minor heart attack there. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you. Richard, guide us through the public toilets.
Thank you, Leader. I suppose I'll be known for the toilets and the budget at this executive meeting. Leader, as you mentioned earlier, you know, we've been in discussions with some of the towns and parishes about how they can help us and we can help them with assets and making long-term savings. So this is a proposal for a long letting and a freehold transfer of public WCs to Teignmouth Town Council. We have a proposal before us, and I'll read the detail on that so it's clear to everyone. It is proposed that Teignbridge grant the following legal interest to the Town Council to ensure that the facilities remain open and operational for the longer term. In respect of the existing women's and men's public WC buildings at Jubilee Shelter, East Cliff Promenade, Teignmouth and the Point car parks, Teignmouth, it is proposed that the Town Council be granted full repairing and insuring leasehold interests for a term of 60 years. In respect of the new public WCs sites at Eastcliff Car Park, Teignmouth, to replace the WC that have already been demolished, and Quayside Car Park, Teignmouth, as an alternative to the closed WC at Brunswick Street. It is proposed that the Town Council again be granted full repairing and insuring leasehold interest for the term of 60 years. In the respect of the premise at the Den, Teignmouth, it is proposed that the Town Council be granted a full repairing and insuring leasehold interest for a term of 60 years, but subject to the potential provision of WC facilities elsewhere at the Den in the event that the current facilities are replaced for back of house facility to support the letting of the Beachcomber building as a destination cafe restaurant. In this regard, discussions are ongoing with the Town Council in respect of the suitable alternative site for the Town Council to construct new facilities. In respect of the premises at Lower Brook Street, Teignmouth, it is proposed that Teignbridge pass on its interest to the Town Council by way of a transfer of a freehold interest subject to restrictive covenants and overage. Leader, colleagues, I ask that the executive to approve the course of action set out in the proposal of this report. This approval will benefit both residents and visitors to Teignmouth long term. Thank you.
Sure. Richard, I take it you're proposing. Do we have a seconder? Lovely, thank you. Councillor McGregor will second. Anyone wish to speak on this item? No? Okay, no, it's good. It does look good. And I'm grateful for Teignmouth Town Council for the work that they're doing and taking control there. And I think it's a very good deal from Teignbridge too. So it's a good example of the way the district and town and parish councils can work together. So it's good to see this report coming to us, and we're on with recommendation to council. So all those in favour? Yeah, lovely. Thank you very much.
That's unanimous.
Unanimous, isn't it? Thank you. So we'll move to item 10, which is the Public Spaces Protection Order Controller Dogs Review Group report. And I'm going to move to Councillor Dewhurst, who shouldn't be surprised at this one, and also to Councillor Nutley, who chaired the review. Thank you. Alistair.
Thank you very much, Leader. But before I start, Councillor Purser mentioned that he'd seen in the media that there'd been a fire in a refuse truck, and I've had confirmation that it was in fact one of our refuse trucks. No one was injured. It was only a minor electrical fire, and it's actually caused very little damage to the truck concerned. So just to reassure everybody that we are still on track and collecting everybody's refuse as per normal. So good morning, colleagues. The Public Spaces Protection Order for Responsible Dog Ownership came into force on the 1st of April 2019. The PSPO provided consistent dog controls for all public spaces in Teignbridge. There are a number of controls, including dog fouling, dogs on leads, and controlling access to beaches. A review group was set up and have reported once already to members, but agreed to review the controls after 1 year. Meetings were held last year, and the report of the review group went to overview and scrutiny committee number 1 on the 22nd of December last year. I'd like to ask Councillor Nutley, who was the chair of the review group, to present the 2 recommendations that are being brought forward here today to the executive for approval. However, as the executive member for this area of work, I fully support the controls that the PSPO gives officers. I also agree with the first recommendation that the review group, along with officers, review the controls and bring back to executive recommendations on renewing the PSPO. We need to focus our publicity to educate the public, but I'm keen that our officers are able to focus on taking robust enforcement action where necessary. The use of signs is a helpful tool where town and parish councils can support the work of our officers. We will support them with a toolkit of posters and literature for them to use in their local area. If they require support with funding, they could approach their local ward members. I therefore propose the following amendment to the second recommendation, and I believe that this has been forwarded around to colleagues, and that amendment reads: A boards or similar for dog fouling hotspot areas being financed through town and parish councils and district councillors' community fund scheme where required. Town and parish councils can advise so that A boards can be located when and where necessary. Other preventative methods of display, such as pavement stenciling and lamppost signs, will also be explored. As part of this initiative, the Environment Protection Manager and councillors Decox and Phipps have discussions with Teignmouth Town Council to support them in a publicity campaign and for them to arrange for appropriate signage for the den in order to address concerns raised in relation to that area. So that's my bit, Leader.
Thank you. And before we move to Councillor Nutley, can we just have a seconder for that amendment, please, and the recommendations? Lovely. Councillor McGregor, super. Councillor Nutley, John, you chaired the review group.
Yeah, thank you, Leader and members. Before I move on to that, if I may, I was obviously very interested in the Teignmouth report on there. And under the prohibitions and requirements, I was quite interested in 6A. Maybe it can be explained at some stage, not this morning, but it started off by saying not to shall shout. So I'm not quite understand what that actually meant, but maybe it can be explained later. I see Councillor Wrigley's got his hand up.
That is a typographical error that will be corrected before it goes to full council.
Okay. Yeah, moving on, if I may. Thank you, Leader. Well, firstly, obviously, this has been a very interesting piece of work that we've done. But firstly, I would like to thank our environmental officer, David Eaton, for all the work and input that he has done, and also Trish Corns for all the documentation she has had to record since we started the review group, and to my fellow committee members for their support over the years. We carried out a consultation survey at the beginning of 2019, having had 151 feedbacks, which I've got here, quite a lot of it, all of which having various views on the proposals being put forward, and which I found some very interesting comments. And I have to say, I actually read every one of them and highlighted various points on them. We then invited some of the people to take part in the survey to come along to meetings to allow them to give further comments and allow us to express the council's intentions and actions that we were taking. Some of which were the number of dogs that some people can handle and control at any one time, to stamp out and possible fine those that are allowing their dogs to foul and not pick up afterwards. We also implemented the time of year restrictions that would be placed on beaches, closing and obviously reopening. We looked at the way some dog businesses were operating, some of which had licenses granted by TDC to run their business from home. It was thought the dog license could be introduced locally, but as there is no government legislation, it would be difficult to implement. We have looked at ways to encourage those that do not pick up after their dogs, and one of which has been obviously recommended was A-boards, with obviously maybe polite notices put on them. But I think that covers, I think, most of what we've been carrying out. And obviously, you've all seen the report, and I must say I agree with the amended recommendation that's been put forward. But we'll ask members for your views and comments.
Thank you very much, Councillor Nutley, and also for the work that you've done on the review group. It's very much appreciated. Councillor Hook.
Thank you. I just wanted to suggest another slight addition to the amendment that Councillor Dewhurst suggested, recognising that there are sort of two main concerns, I believe. One of them is dog fouling, and the other one is dogs off leads. So one of the bylaws was that dogs should be on leads on the highway, adjacent to the highway, and on shared use cycle paths. So when we're talking about these A boards and publicity, at the moment it only talks about dog fouling. So can we also add in that it should be it also include areas where there is a problem with dogs being on leads, because I feel that possibly not everybody knows, so it's not well publicised. We haven't publicised this particular bylaw particularly comprehensively, and perhaps we ought to, because maybe it is the case that lots of people do not know that they should be doing that.
Can we take some guidance? Alistair, maybe we might need to ask the officer, because I'm not sure that. Yeah, okay. Alistair?
So I'm not sure if we have David Eaton with us. We do. So fantastic. As I understand it, the two are sort of essentially one and the same. In the areas where dogs are off leads, tends to be areas where there are particular problems with dog fouling. But I'll let David say his piece as well.
We'll do that. Can I say, Jackie, would you mind just taking down your hand? Lovely, thank you. David Eaton.
Thank you. So the controls within the PSPO, there are 8 specific controls. The review group, when they met, the focus was around dog fouling, but I can see no reason for us not to use the A boards for different hotspots, for different areas, and potentially we would consider using that in the future for littering and fly tipping as well. So I think the focus of the review group was on dog fouling, which is why the recommendation is as before you, but the controls also cover the areas that Councillor Hook has mentioned.
So can I just check for clarity? Councillor Hook's proposed amendment, does it add anything, or is it effectively included in what we've got now?
If you add dogs on leads as per the control, you potentially are excluding the other controls within the PSPO. Right. Okay. My proposal, I don't think I'm allowed to propose, but my suggestion is that the A boards cover the controls of the PSPO, yes, and we choose the appropriate wording depending on the appropriate location.
Yes, I think that's comprehensive, isn't it? Martin, Councillor Wrigley.
Thank you, Leader. Yes, I was just going to support Councillor Hook. One of the big things that was encouraging within Dawlish, particularly for this PSPO, was after we had a black swan taken out by a dog that was off a lead. So having the dogs on leads is an important thing. So I'd fully support the proposal to change it into all of the controls as suggested, rather than just the dog fouling.
So for clarity, I think what David Eaton is just saying to us is that actually what this does allow us to do all of those things, but if you put in one, it might suggest the others don't apply. I think that's where we're at. So what I'm going to suggest is that 2, which was amended by Councillor Dewhurst, is the one that we should approve. And what we've heard from David Eaton is that would allow the council to use the process flexibly to support the right regulation in the right place. Okay? Have I got that right? David, you're nodding. That's good. Alistair, you're nodding. That's good. Excellent. All right. Martin, your hand's still up. Sorry, did you need to say something more? Absolutely lovely. So, Alistair, you're proposing. May I take a seconder? I think we had, well, we'll take Martin Wrigley. All those in favour? I think that's unanimous. Lovely. Thank you very much for that. And thank you, David Eaton, Environmental Protection Manager, for that too. Let's move on to the next item, which is 11, the Devon Joint Waste Strategy public consultation. And this is Councillor Dewhurst as well.
Thank you very much, Leader. Yes, I would like to recommend to Executive that the content of the draft resource and waste management strategy for Devon and Torbay is approved for public consultation. Clearly, it's important we get that sort of message out there. It's an important strategy and takes us through to 2030.
All right. So you're proposing, may I have a seconder for that, please? Councillor Taylor, and all those in favour?
Unanimous.
Lovely, thank you very much for that. So we move to the final item, which is the notice and motion referred from the last council meeting regarding the retention of the £20 universal credit uplift. The motion was submitted by Councillor David Cox, and David, you're with us, so please speak to the motion.
Thank you, Mr. Thank you, Leader. I hope I will get unanimous support for this. The indications from government are that this is likely that they are likely to be able to support this, and I think this council's support for the uplift will help concentrate minds at government level. It's one of the things that can do to help people who are suffering because of the COVID emergency. And it's a good way to deal with poverty. This district council is doing its bit, as the Leader has mentioned, with the council tax discount of 100%, the only council, I think, in Devon. In fact, I think the only council in the southwest, I might be wrong, that does this. So I hope we will support this motion. As I say, we're not just asking government to do this, we're doing things ourselves. And I would congratulate officers at Teignbridge District Council who got the grants out really quickly and helped businesses and individuals with the hardship fund. So I hope people will support this £20 uplift to universal credit and to the legacy benefits. Thank you.
Thank you. David, may I ask, just to clarify, when we talk about the £20 uplift, that's £20 a week, isn't it?
It is £20 a week to universal credit. We're also asking that legacy benefits which weren't included in that uplift are included. So people who are on the old benefit schemes aren't benefiting from that. No. So it would be helpful if the legacy benefits got it as well.
But when we talk about the £20, we don't often say what the time span is, and some people might think it's £20 a month.
£20 a week.
And that's real spending power in our local economy, isn't it? Which
absolutely, it means money. It means that the evidence is that people who are on lower incomes tend to spend their money locally in the local economy. So it will boost our small businesses and will boost our local economy. So it's money into Teignbridge.
Lovely, thank you. I've got a couple of speakers. I had Andrew McGregor first, I think.
I put my hand down because my point has just been covered both by yourself and Councillor.
Thank you. And then Councillor Jeffries.
Thanks. I just wanted to fully support this. I personally feel, given that there's rising costs that seem to be ongoing, that the £20 a week really isn't enough for people with what they're facing, which is why we're seeing so many people weekly increasingly going to need help with their food costs and things like that. So yes, it would be good to turn government's eye to this and get them to understand what people are facing in our communities. Thank you.
Good, thank you very much, Nina. So I take it, Nina, you'll propose a recommendation to Council to approve it. Martin, your second. Councillor Wrigley was second. All those in favour?
That's unanimous.
Lovely. Thank you very much.
Thank you, colleagues.
Thank you, David. That concludes our business for the executive this morning. May I thank you for your time and for going through that and for the work that you've done in preparing the reports that have brought us to today's meeting and also to our officers for their support as well. So thank you very much. And from today's meeting, we will clearly have a busy council meeting next week when we set the budget and look at a variety of other issues. So thank you very much. Have a lovely day. Bye-bye.
Bye now.